Okay, hello, how are you today? Today we're going to go over very quickly the stretching workshop that we ran last Tuesday night, which was covering everything about who, what, how, when to stretch so you can get the best results you can out of your flexibility program. So I'm going to get stuck right into it. It won't take too long. I'll try and wrap this up in about 10 to 15 minutes, so it'll give you a quick overview of what we covered. Alright, so first thing is wanted to sort of provide you with information about the importance of flexibility in the health and fitness program, more importantly how to do it correctly so you get the results you want to achieve. So you should, by the end of this video, you should have a lot better idea about how to do it correctly, I suppose, you know, and some of the factors that most people don't think are attributed to a flexibility program, which might leave you a little bit sort of like thinking, I wish I had known this earlier, which I did in my case. Alright, so stretching, most of us hate it, really take the time to do it, eventually suffer an injury or pain from it. So almost anybody can benefit from a stretching, but it does not mean you need to dedicate heaps and heaps of hours to it or do yoga 5 times a week to get good flexibility. All you need is a plan of identifying what muscles to stretch. As stretching everything creates more problems than it solves, and that's what I see most people do. And in a yoga class it's the same thing too. So I like yoga, I don't like the idea that everyone stretches the same stuff, because we're all different, right? So when you know what areas to stretch and you're stretching only the areas that need it, that's when you get great results. Alright, so moves on to the next point. If you're not assessing, then you're guessing. So the picture here of the bicycle wheel that's all crooked, try and think of that as what muscles do. Alright, so if a bicycle wheel was buckled, then you would you loosen all the spokes or would you tighten them all? Well, if you would sort of have a method of having to loosen the ones that are too loose and tighten the ones that loosen the ones that are too tight and tighten the ones that are too loose. And if you get it right, then you're pretty much going to have a wheel that runs very nice. But if you went around and just tightened every single one of them, very good chance you'd probably snap the spokes. And the wheel wouldn't be able to move anyway, it'd be stiff as anything. And if you went around and loosened them, you'd be a very good chance the wheel would roll right off. Alright, so that'd be an example of too tight spokes would be tight muscles that need to be stretched. The example of what you do with loose spokes is loose muscles that need to be strengthened. So this is the thing that most people don't do when they don't even consider as a factor, is that strengthening stuff improves flexibility. It's like a paradox, because you're sort of tightening something, but because you're tightening something, it loosens its opposite muscle. As everything has what they in the exercise world calls agonists and antagonists. So everything has an opposite reaction. If something tightens, something must loosen. Alright, so sometimes it's good to work the other way around. Not all the time, but it's just knowing which way to start, which we're going to cover. So step one, the most important thing you must do before you do anything is check your breathing. If your breathing is not the correct breathing, and we've been over this in our previous workshop, if you're not sure what that is, I would highly recommend go and watch that video first and then come and watch this one. Because if you don't get your breathing right, your flexibility program will not work. I will 100% guarantee that for you, because your breathing will change everything. Alright, and if you don't believe me, try and hold your breath and see how far you can stretch while holding your breath. Alright, so if you're not breathing right because your body mechanics aren't working, then you're not going to get a great improvement, if probably you won't get any improvement. And that's why here I've said yoga class spends the first 10 minutes doing breathing exercises, funnily enough, which again I like yoga for that reason. Alright, so poor breathing leads to poor posture, which leads to tight muscles. Read that again to yourself. Poor breathing leads to poor posture, which leads to tight muscles. It's not like tight muscles happen on their own. In many cases, poor breathing, especially if you look in the picture here, around with the muscles of her neck and her shoulders, they will be tight and they will remain tight if she has a breathing problem. She can have a massage every day. She can have a massage twice a day if she wants to stretch. It will still remain tight because she will still be continuing to breathe in the poor method, which creates tension in your shoulder muscles. See what I mean? Because the shoulder muscles are secondary respiratory muscles. Your primary respiratory muscle is your diaphragm, which is in your belly. It's nowhere near your neck and shoulders, alright? So if you're not breathing through there and you're using your shoulders, you're going to have problems. Alright, so you'll have a change in posture, which will create all your movements to be different. So if your breathing could lead to a chain reaction of tension, pain and fatigue everywhere. Alright, not just in the neck and the shoulders, it changes everything. I'm not going to go too much into detail, and this could be a whole presentation just on that. This is Paul Chek's totem pole, and you can see right up the top here, breathing's at the very top because it influences everything underneath. So it's pointless trying to treat any injury, design an exercise program to improve flexibility or change your posture if we don't look at the breathing first. So I'm just reiterating the point here: get your breathing right. Right, you'll sacrifice anything else just to get it right. Step 2: who should stretch? All right, 9-point test. So this is quite a tricky one to do. For the sake of this video, I won't run through it all, but the people who've done it before will know what this score is. It's good to test yourself again every now and then to see if it's changed. Usually it doesn't unless you've done something crazy. But if you're a low score on the 9-point test, you really need to have a lot of stretches in your program. If you're a middle range score, you just need to pay attention to what joints are tight or loose. And if you got high scores, then you probably need a bit more strength and stability exercises more so than stretches. Alright, so we'll have a video about how to do this on its own that we'll add in later on, but if you want to know more about that, just send me an email at nick@noregretspt.com.au and I'll point you through how to do that. Not all muscles are the same, so there's tonic muscles and there's phasic muscles. Tonic muscles are the muscles that react to faulty loading by shortening and tightening, tend to become easily facilitated, meaning they become workaholics very, very easily. These would be, say, the muscles like upper traps in your shoulders, and they just want to kick in all the time. The phasic muscles are the ones that react to faulty loading by lengthening and weakening, so they do the exact opposite. This can be a massive problem because since the same event that causes the tonic muscle to shorten and tighten can and usually does result in lengthening and relative weakening of the phasic muscles, so you sort of get like an even bigger imbalance than there already was. Alright, so and this is what the condition refers to, muscle imbalance. So again, for the sake of video, we won't spend too long on this, but if you can just sort of get an idea of what I mean by tonic and phasic. Shorten and tighten is the tonic, lengthen and weaken phasic. Function of the tonic muscles is generally posture. Well, they need to be workaholics because they're meant to work for a long time, otherwise you would just be crippled by gravity living. Where the phasic one are more movement orientated, they're sort of like, they do the short and fast stuff, but having said that, some of them are postural muscles, so a bit of a conundrum. So the tendency of a tonic muscle is that they'll fatigue very late because they work all time, and the phasic ones they'll fatigue very, very quickly, very early. And examples of muscles of this, on the tonic side, the pec minor, the levator scap, if you have a massage and you're really, really sore on your neck, trust me, it's this one. Upper traps, which we've spoken about already, hamstrings, rectus femoris, that's your main quad muscle, and TFL around the hip. This one's a classic problem for people with hip problems and lower back problems. On the other side of the coin, the weaker side, the rhomboids, they're overstretched because the pec minor is tightening up all the time. Lower traps are becoming really, really long and stretched out and weak because the same thing, pec minor is pulling the shoulder forward and the upper traps are kicking in too much. Serratus anterior for the same reason. Thoracic erectors, they're the ones that keep your upper back like very, very straight, keep you in a nice posture. They're getting stretched out from sitting behind computers and just poor posture. VMO, that's your weak quad muscle in your quads, so vastus medialis oblique is what VMO stands for. And anyone with knee pain would know what that muscle is, and they know exactly where it is because they know how weak it is. And glutes, funnily enough, and we go on and on about glutes. So glutes and VMO work together as a team. Lower traps and serratus anterior work together as a team. So shoulder and neck problems, these two guys are very weak. Knee problems, hip problems, feet problems, these two guys are very weak. And these are all the guys that generally need to be stretched. So generally no one really needs to stretch these guys. Occasionally they do, but hardly ever, because usually the posture is sort of setting you up to stretch them anyway. Alright, so step 3, what's a stretch? So there's a stretch test sheet here that from Paul Chek's Eat, Move, Be Healthy book. Remember the bicycle wheel. You don't want to stretch everything, you just want to go through and find out which ones I need to. So the easiest, what you need to do is you just run through every single stretch. Whatever's hard to do, you tick, and that means you need to do it. If it's too easy or you don't feel like you're not getting anything out of it, means don't stretch it. Alright, so again, if you want the stretch sheet, just let me know and I can send you a copy of that, or where to find it, and run through it. If all the people from the workshop will have that, and basically this, you need to sort of be running through this quite regularly to see if there's anything that's changed. Out of those stretches, see some of the key ones. We would call this the scratch stretch, and I've sort of given you here what normal is. Normal is, you can read the top of the shoulder blade. For external rotators, it's reaching around to the bottom of the shoulder blade with the opposite hand. Very, very common for anyone, especially if you're dominant side. If you're right-handed, your right shoulder is going to be a lot tighter, especially on this one, not so much the one coming over. The spinal rotation stretch, again, with so many people with tight hips these days. You can see here Melissa's very tight hips, and she can't get her knees to the floor without this opposite shoulder coming off the ground. Very, very good one for people to test, meaning that she needs to do both those stretches. Quad stretch here, Melissa's very tight again. You see her pelvis tilted forward. She can sit up reasonably straight, surprisingly, so she's not too bad. And the hamstring here, she's pretty good. Alright, so she wouldn't stretch this, but she probably would this one, because I can see that pelvis like that. On this, she's actually pretty good on these, on the scratch stretch, but this is terrible. So out of the 4 that we've got there, you can see she needs spinal rotation stretch and quad stretch, right, but not so much the other 2. If she stretches the other 2, she makes something else tighter instead. Okay, so step 4, how to stretch. There's 3 techniques. There's static stretching, which is what most people usually do, and it's like holding a sustained pressure in a muscle group for a lengthened period of time. Then there's dynamic or ballistic stretching, which is sort of like what you would do more prior to a workout, and it's sort of moving the muscle sort of quickly, not with load, but just sort of stimulating the stretch reflex. And then there's pain.or stretch, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's a bit of a handful to get out. And that's basically like trying to contract a muscle that's opposing the one that's being statically stretched. This would be the most effective method of stretching, bar none. Having said that, you do need to use the other 2. It's just knowing at what times to use them. So I use all 3 consistently throughout the day with people and myself, and I'm going to run through how you do that. So first I'll define the static stretching. So static stretching would be better for after a workout. Alright, so great for improving posture. These remember, posture muscles respond to time. So if your muscles are chronically shortened and you need to improve joint range of motion, this is the best method. And you need to hold each stretch for a minute or more and perform maybe 2 to 3 sets. Always remember, don't be too aggressive or your body will react against the stretch to protect you from injuring itself. So I see that quite common, people just doing stretches way too hard. Right. P&F stretching is ideal for during workout, and that's what you would experience when you train with us. So this is where we put the muscle to be stretched under tension, then activated against an isometric or immovable resistance for about 5 seconds, followed immediately by 5 seconds of relaxed lengthening. You find that breathing influences your stretching. A general rule of thumb is to inhale as you activate a muscle and exhale as you relax and stretch it. You've got a very narrow window during which the contraction will relax the muscle, facilitating the stretch. So that's why when you push against it, you sort of have to relax for 5 seconds. You have to take the stretch just that little bit further. Each muscle you stretch this method should be exposed to between 3 and 5 sort of cycles. Sometimes the tighter ones might need to be done a little bit more often, but yeah, but that's generally how you do it. So we'll have some videos a bit more in depth about how to do this, and you can see us doing that, so stay tuned for more on that so people can get the idea of how to do it right. Dynamic stretching, again, it's sort of like, you know, especially if you're first thing in the morning workout person, this is really, really important. So many people get muscle tears and that from just not warming up. They might have had actually reasonably good flexibility, but because the muscles were cold and they were stiff, and then they went straight into doing their sport or their exercise routine, they develop a muscle tear from just not being warm. So using movements that replicate what you're about to do is the best way of sort of using a dynamic warm-up. Example for running would be butt kick running or skipping drills. In the gym, the rower would be the best one for warming up. Walking on a treadmill, it's warming up, but it's not really as effective as using something like the rower, or riding the bike be sort of okay for the legs but not really doing anything for the arms. Hence that's why we like the rower. Alright, so step 5, when to stretch. So when to stretch. Best for injury prevention or pain reduction, I suggest stretching at night as close to as bed as possible. This is because your body does most of its tissue healing at night, and if you lengthen the tight muscles before you go to bed, they will heal in a lengthened state, because you're not going to do anything for the next 8 hours that shortens them up. And all your hormones that you release when you're asleep, they actually make things go very relaxed, because you don't, unless you have a nightmare or you sleepwalk, they're going to be very much like very floppy muscles. So if you've lengthened them out, you're sort of teaching the brain to keep it at that lengthened state for a longer time. So meaning you're going to have a much more effective result from the program just from the time of day you're stretching. Whereas as opposed to say doing it first thing in the morning, it might have been the right stretch, you're doing it the right method, but you go to work and you sit down all day, or you do a workout, you just tighten it back up to the way it was, so you really don't achieve much at all. Now regardless of when you stretch, best if your body's warm. So about the temperature that causes a light sweat is just right. So at night, after a shower in the morning, or after a walk or after a warm-up is the best time to stretch. So even when doing this one late at night, like sort of have it be a little bit warm just prior to doing it, or otherwise you won't be able to get the muscle to the correct length that you're looking for. Step 6, now this is a big factor, you must reduce your stress. So this chick here, she looks massively stressed out. So stinking thinking will create huge tight muscles. We all know our shoulders and neck get tight when we're stressed out, right? So stress, the thinking of just stuff in your life will create the muscles that will turn on the muscles that create the flexion, meaning the muscles that want to put you in the fetal position, because this is the position your body feels it's safe in. So by first acknowledging the stress in your life, and secondly having a plan or a strategy to deal with it, will move you one giant step forward to improving your flexibility. This isn't a topic that we could talk about an hour on, and this will be our next workshop, so if you want to know more about that, I'd highly recommend to come to. Just for the sake of this video, we won't touch too much on that, but just sort of have in your mind, if you're really, really stressed out, that will affect your flexibility, I'll guarantee you that. Alright, so just acknowledging it and doing something about it will help you. Step 7, drink more water. Alright, body's made up of approximately 60% water, some say it's 70%, some say it's 50%, regardless it's a lot. Alright, so just mild dehydration will create muscles, tendons and connective tissue to tighten up. We all know what it feels like when we haven't drank enough water, we get muscle cramps, usually hamstrings and calves. Also there's a lot of muscles that are developed by connective tissue, which is called fascia, and this provides the structural support and protection. These fascia are comprised almost entirely of water. An example of fascia is ITB in the leg. Now if anyone who's watching this has had ITB problems knows how painful it is rolling across a foam roller. Now if you're a person that doesn't drink enough water, your foam roller exercise won't really be doing a lot for you. It will just manage it, but it won't improve it. If the minute you start drinking more water again, you're probably going to have, and you continue doing what you need to do, you'll have a significant improvement. Alright, so just bear that in mind. Dehydration will tighten you up. Step 8, Tai Chi or yoga. So I like to use this exercise here, which Melissa's down the bottom. It's called the Tai Chi rocker. I learnt this one from Paul Check. Very, very easy to do. I'll attach the instructions with this video that you can sort of watch this later on. But basically just creating like a simple method of helping you to reduce your stress levels and bringing everything into balance. This exercise is a bit like rocking a baby to sleep, so it sort of helps the muscles to relieve their tension. Last step, step 9, strengthen weak muscles. So we touched on this before. This we could go on and on about. This is quite complex, but just understand that whenever there's a tight muscle, there's also a weak muscle. So that tight ITB that we spoke about a minute ago, there will be weak glutes that will be associated with this. So remember the tonic and phasic? This is a tonic one, and the glutes are the phasic ones. Alright, so if we spend a lot of time strengthening the glutes and we continue to foam roll and drink water and do what we need to do for this, there's a good chance it's going to loosen up. If we only do one thing and we don't strengthen the glutes, there's a good chance it's going to stay the same. Alright, so understanding that you need to strengthen things to improve flexibility is a big part of the flexibility program. Alright, most people just do the stretches and hope they improve, and they won't, because there's certain areas that are still unstable and the body wants to stiffen you up to stabilize itself, otherwise it feels it's going to collapse on itself. Alright, so last thing you've got to do is take action. I've given you a lot of information here. Information is only useful if you use it. So again, if you need help, we want more information, get in touch with me, Nick at noregretspt.com.au, or go to a website which is www.noregretspt.com.au, and yeah, and we'll be in touch, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.